Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Wargaming. And I'm your host, Dom Maidlow, also known as Dark Techno Dom from the Realspace Raiders Drukhari podcast. And with me today, I've got another legend for you. And this is Liam from Goonhammer. How are you doing, Liam?
Yeah, hi, I'm doing good, man. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to this interview and just having a chat about Warhammer and the hobby we are so in love with. So, yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about Warhammer if you like.
Yeah. So, for those of you that don't know Liam or his website Goonhammer, it is the oracle of all 40k sort of. It's got almost like a newsroom. I kind of see it as. It's like a website where there's just spewed reviews about tournaments, reviews about army lists, reviews about what's hot, what's coming out, and it's probably for me it's like a staple of my weekly like binge of 40k and other hobby like content. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of your website, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So how did Goonhammer start then? How did you kind of like start this start and grow it to what it is now?
Basically by accident. And I think it's one of those things where each step has almost been kind of a natural evolution. We've never really planned to do what we've done. It's just kind of been, we've got to a certain point and gone, okay, well, what do we do next? Just because we enjoy doing it so much.
Yeah. So it kind of just started as like you and a couple of mates, and you kind of just wanted to just have all these articles and a place where you can just like put content and kind of like a collaboration, so people can actually just have a one place where they can go for all of their hobby needs. And this is exactly what Goonhammer is now, and it's great. I have appeared on it myself a couple of times.
You have? What sorts of us?
Yeah, it's with I think the first time was for the London Open. I was on there, and I took a really bad Drukhari list, and somehow managed to draw my way to come in third.
Well, if it came third, it's not that bad, is it?
It's not that bad, but I submitted the list. It was a double Trueborn list, and for those of you that don't know, Liam is also a big Drukhari player, and we first met on the Realspace Raiders podcast, where we had him on to just have a chat with us.
Yep.
So Liam, the list was double Trueborn in Raiders, and then just loads of Raiders with Dark Lancers, and then like 2 Talos. But it had no MSU in it, so it couldn't hold objectives very well, and it kind of just floated around. And I was like, this is a great list. It's like 17 Dark Lancers. And I submitted it, and then I was like, I'm so pumped. And then I played my mate Lewis on like the Thursday before the tournament, and I got like thoroughly whipped by him. I was just like, this is a terrible list. What a mistake. And yeah, I somehow managed to draw in a seam and draw like Tom from Still a Geek. And yeah, I did it right. It was quite a funny one because I thought the list was absolute trash.
You get that sometimes in practice games though, where like you roll it out for the first time, you're excited about it, and then you kind of go, wow, this is garbage. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And sometimes it is just that you're kind of getting used to the list. You didn't really know how it played before you put it on the table. And sometimes you're right, and it is garbage, and you shouldn't have submitted it, but it's too late by that point.
Yeah.
It really depends.
Yeah,
it really depends how you're feeling.
Yeah, and so that's another thing about Goonhammer, which is great, is that you release articles about all like 40k tournaments that come around, and then you kind of do a list breakdown of which is actually really nice to hear as well if you manage to make it on Goonhammer, because they'll have your list and then they'll give their opinion about your list and why it did so well. Not just talking about Drukhari, but like every single army under the sun that does well in the tournament, they will write about it. How have you been, how have you felt with the writing at the moment with this quite repetitive top 1 or 2 armies that are popping up everywhere, the Custodes and the Tau?
So it's irritating, but it's also kind of a gift, because there's a certain point where you can just write it's Emperor's Chosen Custodes and like that's it. You don't have to say anything else because everyone knows what's in the list. Everyone knows how it works. I tell you what, the competitive innovations was James's thing, wings on the site. And he's been doing that more or less on his own for most of the life of 9th edition. I think we started it right after the Vanguard Tactics tournament in, I want to say like August 2020, when there was that brief kind of break with COVID, and we kind of had a few tournaments before it all shut down again. And he's kind of carried on doing that for a while now, and we've had people kind of pitch in from time to time, but it's mostly been him on his own. I started helping him with it last week just to kind of give the guy a bit of a break. Oh my god, it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so much work. And I knew it was a lot, but it's so much work, and he does this every week. It's incredible. Yeah, you're just covering a single GT. You've got, we've got the showdown thing now. We talk about the top table game. We talk about the top army. Even just covering those kind of rest of the best things where we say, oh, here's the guys who kind of went 4-1. They didn't kind of finish in the winning positions, but they, they were like second, third, fourth, whatever at a GT. Even doing that bit just takes a little bit of time, because you've got to look at every list and kind of work out what his gimmick is and what it's doing.
Yeah.
And you're doing that for, we had, I want to say 11 tournaments last week, all over the world, and it's just so much.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm always just so impressed by like those articles, like for the tournament ones and the Hammer of Math ones. Like I generally feel like it's like a team of people being like, right, you take 2 tournaments, you take 2 tournaments, I'll take these 2 tournaments, and we'll run through them. But it's not, and it's so impressive how detailed all of these reviews are, because it really is great, and it's nice to actually see like what I'm call you professionals, what professionals actually think of these, people who just writing lists. And it's nice when there's something like Emperor's Children pops in, you're just like Custodes. Oh, Emperor's Children, cool.
Yeah.
And it's like all the Custodes have like a little thing, and Tau have like a slightly chunkier thing. And then it's just like Emperor's Children, like this massive paragraph of like, this is epic.
I'll tell you what, the worst thing about Tau being such a big army right now is that the army I probably understand least. It's always one. I mean, I took a break from the hobby between sort of 5th and 8th, basically. I played a little bit of 6th and then missed it. And during that time, Tau got a bunch of new units.
Yeah.
And I came back and I just thought these were like player nicknames. Like Cold Star, I was like, oh, is this just like Tau players being a bit kind of anime? And it was like, no, it's an actual unit. Like I've missed those things being introduced. And it's a code that always makes my head spin. So I'm seeing these lists that are just full of stuff, and I'm like, please, can I have any army I understood better?
Yeah.
But thankfully James gets them, so it's all good.
Yeah. So just speaking about Tau and the isn't Cold Star, it's the Onaga Gauntlet guy. I don't know if they've got a nickname for him yet.
Captain Donkey Punch.
Yeah. He killed Drazar in 1 round of combat, and I was like, but Jesus, what? And then he was like, oh, he gets his gauntlet, and then he also gets his flamer. And I was like,
yeah.
You're better in combat than me, and I'm Drazar.
So
what?
This is interesting because it's something we've looked at with Tau recently. What is making them so good? And there's a ton of stuff. What's really interesting with Tau lists is they're all over the place. Almost everything in the codex is getting taken.
Yeah.
Their Forge World irrelevant, but the stuff actually in the plastic in the codex is almost everything is seeing the table. It's actually really impressive how good the internal balance is.
Yeah.
Similar to what Drukhari was like, for the last kind of 12 months. But what you are seeing is this Warlord trait, Precision of the Hunter. So they reroll hits, they reroll wounds. It applies to a shooting and melee. And I don't think anyone really thought about, well, okay, this guy's got great shooting. The Crisis Commander or the Cold Star, whichever kind of variant. He's got great shooting. We've given them a way to get a great melee weapon, which you don't replace or anything. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a relic. Just get it. And then the Flamer as well, which is their prototype system things. Yeah. And you put all those together, and he's suddenly throwing out a huge volume of attacks and high quality attacks.
Yeah.
And it's just like, did you not connect the dots here of what these would all do? Like, I get that the idea was they should give Tau something that was capable in melee, but it's kind of like, so this is Drazar, but also he can shoot.
And like 18 inches or whatever if you wanted to.
Yeah, we think of all the redeploys in the game where they kind of made them like, oh, next turn, or you go back to strat reserves or whatever. In the console, I was like, yeah, I'm over there now. And it's just, oh, okay, cool. That's fine.
I don't get it why they go, right, so what we do is we give the one thing that Tau aren't good at. We'll just make one thing obscene, so that it covers all the bases.
I liked it when I first read it in the codex. I liked it because I was like, well, this is cool. Like Tau having no melee is kind of uninteresting. Having the option to at least go, okay, here's something in the codex that can fight a bit, great. But then you kind of look how it all stacks together, and it's like, this is way more than I think they expected it to be. I don't think anyone kind of sat down and went, here's all these things together. And the flavor as well, because it isn't a relic, you can take both. It's just like, it's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to do. And it's like, I don't know, it just confuses me because I don't understand why you would, like, the reason why they don't have melee is because they are so oppressive in their shooting that they kind of don't need it, because then they can just pull out of combat, shoot you, all that sort of stuff. Or even combat, their suits count as like monsters and vehicles, so they can just shoot you anyway. And yeah, it's and then you slap on that, it's a bit obscene.
Yeah, having like a top tier melee character that's also part of this incredible shooting army it's a lot.
Yeah,
I think what I was hoping for was that there would be a little less of the shooting, a little more of the melee, just kind of rebalance them a bit to not be so one phase.
Yeah,
They kind of just kept the single phase thing, but also got that guy, and it was like, oh, okay, that's a choice.
So if you just thinking off the top of my head, so if you were writing the rules for the next FAQ or the next like points update, because they're kind of, they're not going to dark technomancer them where they just delete it out of the codex pretty much.
Yeah.
How would you adjust Tau and to balance it out so they don't need the Drukhari treatment where they need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nerfs over 6 months? Because I think it'd just be better for the hobby if they just go, right, one nerf, come on, deal with it, like AdMech kind of.
Yeah. So I'm not convinced you can, because I think very similar to Drukhari, the whole book is good. And we saw it with Iron Hands as well when we initially looked at Iron Hands back in sort of late 8th edition.
Yeah.
And you go kind of, oh, what's the problem with Iron Hands? What's the problem with Drukhari? And it's like, well, all of it, really. Like, there's the internal balance of the book is so good, and what it does is so broad that you can't pick one thing. We were talking about Tau sort of yesterday when we were doing this week's competitive innovations drafting. And it was like, oh, here's a list where a guy's got, block of crisis suits. They've got triple air bursting frags on every model. Like, that's crazy. These things are so good. And then like the next list I looked at, I think it was Marcus Hinson's from War of the Roses, and I don't think he had any crisis suits. And he had 2 Riptides, and people are saying, oh, Riptides are bad now. They don't really do enough.
Right.
And it's like, well, he's taken a list with 2 Riptides and a Yuba Broadside, and I don't think any crisis suits at all. And it did really well.
Loads of drones, or?
Yeah. So those, I'm trying to remember what else was in there. Marker drones, stealth suits, 30 strike fire warriors, which again, a lot of people aren't taking those. They're saying, well, breaches are better, but he was like, well, no, I'm taking the original kind of fire warriors, the strike squads. Strike teams, that's the one. Strike squads are Grey Knights.
Got 30-inch range and can rapid fire at 30, is that right?
Yeah. I can't remember if they could rapid fire 30, but yeah, they're what, strength 5, I think they're AP 1. Like, they're a good solid unit.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar where you have that, where do you start? Because if you kind of are very focused and target just one thing, what you probably end up doing is just doing, you just move them on to the next build in the codex. So we saw it with Dark Technomancers, that got nerfed, and deservedly so. Yeah. But then people just shifted to kind of what we called like the Drukhari good stuff, and you saw the Chronos as well.
Yep.
And eventually Talos, like there was just so many places you could pivot to because so much of the book had sort of different strengths.
Yeah.
I think in terms of stuff to talk about, so there's a competitive innovations editorial which will talk about exactly this. What do we do to look at Tau and to look at Custodes as well. There's some sort of points tweak stuff. So crisis suits just generally need to be more expensive. You can talk about some of the guns, so the air bursting frags, the plasmas, SMS, wherever they are in the codex. Those probably need to be looked at as well. But also just like the basic crisis suit is so cheap, and if you just kind of pick like one gun and say that's the problem, you probably just means they switch to a slightly different build. Probably storm surges. People are taking triple storm surges, which was kind of okay in 8th. And then in 9th, Vorkhan storm surges just everywhere. We're seeing loads and loads of those.
Yeah.
And probably just tweaking a few sort of bits and pieces. That Precision of the Hunter Warlord trait, I've seen it suggested either to kind of be pick a weapon to use that on, or to make it just kind of reroll ones to hit and wound. There's a few different bits. It's basically you've got to take that kind of broad approach. And I think with Tau as well, it's not just Tau, because the other thing is the amount of indirect they have, both the smart missiles and the air bursting frags. One of the big problems is you can put such a volume of output and not even be visible to your opponent. You can sit 5 crisis squads in your back object, on your back objective behind a ruin if you want to. If you're thinking of those like LGT style balls with the big L shapes, you can just pop them in there, much like Hive Guard, and they could just sit there pouring out these shots every turn.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And I think Indirect in general, similar to what we were talking about a few months ago with planes, where you had these Orc and these Abmech lists with 4 or 6 planes that were just so much.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really do anything about it without generally saying, like, we need to restrict planes because we might fix Abmech planes and Orc planes now, but like we saw in 8th edition with Eldar planes and Marine planes, and like we'll see potentially in the future, you can't just go, oh, well, we'll just fix the data sheet that's a problem at the moment, because your issue is every time this kind of data sheet is good, it's the best option.
Yeah.
And we saw that with Eldar, we saw that with Marines twice, actually. We saw it at the start and at the end of 8th. And it happened again with Abmech and Orc. So actually the flyer limit was good, because you can look at those data sheets still and go, okay, like WAS bombs are crazy good still, Strataraps is really good. But you've given yourself that kind of hard break of, like, you can't ever have them be too much of a problem.
Yes.
Because you can't have too many of them. And I think similarly with Indirect, it'll kind of go the same way of Indirect in general needs to have something to limit it. Because we've seen it already with Hive Guard. We saw it in 8th with kind of Thunderfire cannons and Whirlwinds. We're talking about it now with Tau. We were talking about it with Rucker Trucks with Orcs previously, where they literally just stopped you taking any more of them. You get up to 3 and absolutely no more. And I think that's kind of where it is. It has to have a general kind of fix of this particular way of attacking the game is too much. And we saw it with planes, we saw it with Indirect, and it's the same problem in both cases. Is your kind of chief way of playing defensively that isn't kind of just unit stats is terrain.
Yes.
And planes don't care about terrain, and Indirect doesn't care about terrain, and you can't do anything about it. I think Eldar, we're also going to see potentially the sort of shadow beams or the D-cannons and night spinners.
Good. Yeah.
And similarly, that codex looks like it's costed better, so it may be less of a problem. But it's going to be no more fun of a play experience if you're sat there watching a guy, pump D-cannon shots at you at Starweaver or Shadow Weaver shots, compared to air bursting frags or rocket trucks or whatever else. So that's probably the other big thing is Indirect needs to not just be exactly as good as shooting a regular gun, except you can also hide it.
Yeah, -1 to hit on Indirect does not seem a leap. I think that should be the case. And I think it would definitely need a tweak if Guard came out, and then maybe they can get something that would help them, because, well, then again, their Indirect is actually pretty good. So
yeah, I mean, that's a good Guard is a great example, actually, because Guard is not a good army right now.
No.
But the one thing you see in every list is the Manticores.
Yeah.
Because that's your one reliable source of damage and just doesn't instantly die. And again, it's because you can hide them and still pump out the shooting. And I think -1, I've seen people suggest kind of no rerolls.
I think the -1 just fixes it, because, like, I know, maybe -1 with no buffs. Like, it's always like it's always like it always hits on a -1. You can't make it a +1 with prescience or like things like that, because obviously people are going to go straight away and game it in like you'll be able to get like +1 to hit. It's quite easy. And then you're going to put an extra something that will give them rerolls. I would just say, if you're shooting out line of sight, you don't gain any benefits to the hit roll. It's always -1 to hit. But if you can see the person, if you can see them, you can draw a line of sight, then you can shoot them normally, and then you can get your full ballistic skill.
And I think that's probably a fair compromise. It has a little rule set here. This weapon can Can target units that are not visible to the bearer, and just add that rider. It's always -1 to hit and can never receive positive modifiers to hit.
Yeah.
Just throw that in there, and then you kind of have that. At least it's not shooting at full ballistic skill.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's not kind of like, oh, I'm out of line of sight. I'm somehow hitting you on 2s with real 1s. Like, you may as well just auto hit.
Yeah. There's another problem as well to thinking about this, because I played Tau on the weekend, and marker lights seem very good if just 1 hits you.
Yeah.
+1 to hit or something like that.
Marker lights are weird because they were too bad in the old version where you needed them to be able to do anything. But then they kind of simplified them down. It's like, oh, they're just here all the time, I guess. Like, you just always, if you need them, you have them.
Yeah, it's like Farsight. You always count as having 1 marker light on you if you're in so many inches of a Tau unit. So then what they do is they yeet everything forward, so everything's got marker lights on them, and now the entire Tau army hits on a 3+ rather than the 4+, which kind of is stupid, because the reason why they hit a 4+ is because their arsenal is just so oppressive that they need to have some downside, and they've just gone, well, you don't have one, so don't worry, go win tournaments.
And this is a feature of a few different things they've made kind of too good recently, is they go, oh, you've got a weakness, let's make sure you don't have that, because you might feel bad if you have a weakness.
Yeah.
The other good example of that one is Ramshackle, where you have these little light buggies. They're relatively cheap, they're relatively light. You can get them chewed up by like heavy bolters or something, and they go, oh, but that might feel bad if you're getting shot with a heavy bolter and your stuff just dies. So let's give you -1 damage. And it's like, no, that's what you were supposed to do to kill them. That's how that was supposed to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you've made it so only las cannons kill them. Well, that's not what's supposed to be shooting those things.
Yeah, it's also like the treatment we got with our Dark Lancers. It's like, so like combat is like the book, and you might feel a bit bad if you're just screaming your boats and they will just die over there. Sure, we'll do. We'll make sure all of the raiders have an anti-tank gun, so you can kill those dreadnoughts before you get there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Dark Lancers were very much like kind of disappointing. And it's classic GW where they kind of went, oh, last edition they were really bad, so let's make them cheap and also make them really good and make the Raider itself really good. And it's just like, just push all the switches at once. So you didn't have to do all of that.
Yeah. So what I find quite interesting, so coming from your perspective as a seasoned Drukhari player as well, and I know on all of these episodes I go into it going like, I'm not going to talk Drukhari because I do on Realspace Raiders, but I seem to get people who all have an opinion on Drukhari because it's been the meta for like the last year.
Yeah, you can't escape them.
I can't escape them, and the amount of time I go, no, we're not top tier anymore. We're still good. We can't dance. We're not winning all the tournaments like we used to. But how do you reckon Drukhari fare against the new codex, the 2 new bad boys that have just come out with Tau and Custodes, and then also what's just come out as well is the new Eldar and apparently the new menace, Harlequins.
Yeah. So I think Tau is probably the hardest possible game because your whole deal is putting, fragile T3 infantry down, and that normally works because you trade pretty well. You go, okay, these incubi are going to die, but they're going to kill something worth killing first, and we'll kind of win on attrition.
Yeah.
And Tau go, yeah, no, that's T3 infantry. It's on the table. It's just dead. Just don't even think about it. It's gone.
Yeah.
So I think into Tau is very poor because you can outplay them, but a good Tau player is not going to lose to that style of army because it's just one of those things where the way that they're playing and the kind of damage profile they're putting out, it just deals with that specific thing very, very well. Custodes is kind of hard to tell. If up to the end of January, I had absolutely no problems with Custodes. Talos just was like, this is great. This is like a free win because Custodes players love to just like shove their jet boats forward and then you just eat them and then problem solved.
Grotesques were perfect into as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think since then it's a little bit different. I think it's a harder match just because you have kind of fewer tools and your stuff is more fragile relatively. And Custodes players have finally realised that bikes are good. which took them a little while, but they've got there.
9 of them. Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel not as good about it, but I think it's the better of the two. I'd rather play into Custodes than into Tau. Tau feels like it's always going to be uphill to maybe kind of drag a win out.
It's just depressing,
just
isn't
like
it?
digging your nails in and just kind of fighting for it, while the other guy is not having that hard of a time.
Just
Whereas Custodes feels like
cancel the dice. Just
exactly
saves.
Eldar is interesting. I'm not quite sure because I don't have a handle yet, I don't think, on where Eldar is going to land. I think it looks like there's some really strong stuff there. How Drukhari play into it kind of depends, because Drukhari is kind of in flux now at the moment as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a game there. Harlequins, I mean, I'm not that worried about Harlequins because my intention is just to add Harlequins to Drukhari, so problem solved.
Yeah.
It's which I think is actually the most interesting thing out of this book for sort of Drukhari play is actually the Harlequins give you that extra different dimension. You have a few different data sheets to pick from. You've got kind of new options of stuff you can do. And then the other thing is obviously being able to bring the Shadow Seer, because now you can actually do psychic secondaries, which is which is crazy. Because I think that is a thing where like you quite often find with Drukhari, you've got Herd the Prey, which is just stupid good, and you can do one of the action secondaries pretty well. You can do retrieve, you can do banners if you kind of want to. You have those two really strong options, and the third one's kind of dependent on opponent, on kind of what they brought. You might kind of build to the last, but taking Shadow Seer opens up psychic interrogation as a thing, and that's very good. Like, it's a good secondary. You're seeing a lot of people doing it. You're seeing Custodes players do it, Sisters players do it, bringing the Inquisitor to open that secondary for themselves. And I think the Harlequins gets you both good units and also an option on doing that. So it's I mean, great units. The untargetable bikes is a fun one. Void Weavers look good. There's a lot of different stuff you can do. Void Weavers, they finally remembered they could give them a good gun, and they've probably given them too good of a gun. But
because I when I read it, I was just like, what's this going to be? Just like a las cannon? Oh no, okay, it's like a mini fire prism for half the points.
Yeah,
this is a lot better than a fire prism because it's half the points. I'll just take a squad of 3.
Yeah, you can squadron them. You can put out like 18 shuriken shots with Bladestorm on them.
Yeah, which
is a lot of shuriken cannons.
It really is.
And they've still got another good gun, and they're good to the last target as well, because they're relatively hard to kill because of the -1 to hit and the no rerolls.
Yep.
And if you lose like 2 and you go, oh well, I've got to keep this alive somehow.
Yeah.
They're not that hard to hide, and you don't care that much if you go, well, I'll just whip this behind terrain and not worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
You aren't losing that much.
I came up with a Drukhari Quins list the other day, and it just felt dirty because it's definitely not Drukhari at all. It's just Harlequins with like the bit that they're missing, which is scoring.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you it. So it's Shadow Seer. I'm not going to go through all of the stuff because it's just it's a lot. So it's just Shadow Seer, Troop Master, another Shadow Seer. Then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squads of troop in 6 transports. Then Solitaire, Death Jester to bait, assassinate. Then 3 Void Weavers, 4 Sky Weavers, Drukhari now, Archon, 3 racks and a court. That's it.
Okay.
That's 2,000 points. And what the Drukhari bit does, it adds a fight last, which they don't have, and then it adds 3 units that can rod.
Yeah.
And then it adds court, who just sit at the back and go, my objective.
Yeah, big block of wounds, sit at the back, don't mind us.
Yeah, and then that they just Harlequin. I don't know what you do against that. I'm probably going to be playing that at the Hellstorm Wargaming event at the end of the month.
Okay.
Which will be probably the week of this release. So I've just told everyone my list. Yes, there's some really interesting stuff there. But yeah, so out of the 4 armies there, how, if you were to put them in like a tier system, as like number 1, 2, 3, 4, who's number 4? Then going up to who you think's the number 1 army in the game right now?
So Harley's Craft Worlds.
Yeah, including all of that together. Now they're all out. All four of them are out. What's number 4 first?
So I think of those 4, it's probably Custodes 4 and Craft Worlds 3, but that one's real fine. Like, I think Craft Worlds are pretty good into Custodes, so it kind of, that's roughly where that goes.
Yeah.
Harlequins 2 and then Tau 1.
Yeah. Okay, that I tend to agree, and I think a lot of people are going to think that Harlequins are just the answer to the current meta, which I think they are. If I'm honest, I think they beat up Custodes real good.
Mhm.
I think because they can take away their invulns and they can get like flat damage 4 on the solitaire and all like
Yeah.
whatever it is on the troop master or whatever it is. And then they also beat you try and hit like you try and kill those vehicles, all those vehicles with Tau. I don't think you can, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I mean, I could be persuaded it's the other way around in terms of sort of Tau and Harlequins. I think the thing with Tau is it's such a broad book and it's such a range of stuff. With Harleys, you kind of have that question of there's only 8 data sheets, and they're all pretty good. They're pretty good data sheets now.
Because they have to make them good. Because
Yeah.
they got to sell. They got to sell a copy. Like the book is huge.
The book's
You could use that to
enormous.
knock someone out. Like
It's
I had
200
my hand,
pages.
and
It's
I was just like,
crazy.
oh my god, I could be curling this. It's so big. So yeah, I actually tend to agree with you. Like I do think Tau are the top dogs, and I think I think they're probably easier to play than Harlequins and Eldar. I know a lot of people just think Eldari sort of armies, including Drukhari and Yunari, are very like point and click, and you just hit the go button and then you win. It's not like that. You need you need to know how to move and finesse and set yourself up. I think like people like Sean Naden gonna be absolutely killing it with Eldar, and he's gonna be coming up with these crazy combos, which I can't wait to see.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think Custodes has dropped a little bit. I think, like you said, I think you could flip either Eldar or Custodes because no one really knows the Eldar build at the moment. I think a lot of people are thinking Banshees and Webway because that's very good with Jane Zar. Fire prisms look amazing.
Yeah.
The no line of sight shootings, all of the guns look incredible. Corsairs look a bit pants.
Yeah, they're a bit of a shame, the Corsairs. They kind of put data sheets in because they'd made the models and they didn't seem to really know what they wanted to do with them. So just like, oh, they're in the book, we guess. There's units that will let you build the kill team stuff or the regular stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of, they just ran out of energy with.
How many points are Corsairs?
I think the Corsairs, like the basic one's like 50 points or something, but they can't be your minimum troop. So, you know, they would be fantastic if they could, because you'd go, okay, brilliant. Well, I'll throw those in and kind of fill up a troop slot.
Yeah, oh yeah, the Corsair Void Reavers, 10 points a model.
Yeah.
Got the Drukhari keyword. How do you see him working with Drukhari?
I don't know. I don't think they bring anything to Drukhari that you don't already have. Like, if you want that, you have Cabalites for 8 points,
Yeah.
or you take Racks. I think they're a lot less interesting in Drukhari. The only thing that's potentially interesting is, again, that you can take the Psychic one.
But then you can't get Psychic secondaries, though.
Yeah, it doesn't do Psychic secondaries, and none of the powers are that relevant because they all seem to target, they target a Suriani core.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, it doesn't really add anything for you. Like maybe you get a Smite.
What you could, I mean, so what's the Mist Shield? Do they all have a Mist Shield? It's just one of them hasn't got a Mist Shield.
I think it's just one of them.
One of them's got a 4-up invuln. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess like you could see him if you were using the Drukhari as like a poor man's Trueborn, really.
Yeah, like again, they kind of do a bunch of roles, but not that well. And I think that's kind of where they end up landing, is they're kind of fine. The other thing in Drukhari is they won't get traits of any kind.
No, they wouldn't.
Part of what drives that shooting is the Black Heart reroll or the the Obsidian Rose reroll, and they don't benefit from that. So.
Well, I guess if you give them all like shuriken weapons, then if you wanted to, you could have better troops with in venoms, but I don't really see them.
Yeah.
See them doing that. Wraith cannon's quite nice. I kind of like a wraith cannon.
Yeah, I think it's just one, is it?
3. Yeah, you can have one. Yeah. Oh, it's such a shame that the Drukhari book and Eldar book didn't come out at the same time, because Corsairs in our actual book would be awesome.
I think it's probably a good thing for everyone they didn't come out together. Can you imagine what the meta would have been like over the last year?
Oh my god, yeah. God, so we went on a big tangent then, which is obviously a good thing. But so we were talking about Goonhammer before we went on this little meta tangent. But me and you just like talking, so that's absolutely fine. So I want to talk about tournaments because you are a tournament player, and I've met you at some tournaments, and you go to many tournaments, and you've already been to many tournaments this year, and you've just come back from a team tournament.
Yes.
And I've never been to a team tournament before. I'm super interested by it because I'm going to my first one next month with a group of my mates. And hopefully we can do quite well because we've managed to accumulate a NIDS player who's doing Crusher. We've got a Genestealer cult also can play Drukhari. We've got Custodes who can also play Necrons and Craft Worlds, and then we've got a wild card who can play every army, and then we've got me who's Drukhari, Harlequins, or a couple of other armies. But when you go about to these team tournaments, so for those who don't know, team tournament, you can't have the same faction. So you can't have like 4 Drukhari players and then 1 Chaos player. It needs to all be different factions. And when it comes to the table, you basically you stare across from the table of the other team, and you make dodgy eye contact with all of them, and then each you chooses an attacker and defender. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be fair, could you tell it? Because I've never had the experience. So you're probably better going through it.
So what I did was I kind of made someone else do all this stuff. So yeah, and I recommend that highly because it's a much easier way to experience it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, basically what you said is true. So you each put down a defender, then one side reveals who their defender is. The opponent will then put forward 2 attackers. And basically, say you could have, you could play into either Custodes or Drukhari, for example.
Yeah.
And then the person with the defender picks which one, and then picks their table. And then you just kind of repeat the process until you've paired everyone off, and that's essentially it. So your tactic really is understanding kind of what do you think they're going to put down as defenders, what are they going to be placing down, and then what are your good attackers where you want to put them into most things. So you might say, Custodes good into basically everything, or Tau, for example, where you've got good matchups into basically everything. That's a good attacker. Or you might go, well, those are good defenders because we can put those down, and then whatever they play as attackers doesn't matter. So that's kind of your psychology.
That's good tactics. I like that.
And then that's kind of it. You're kind of trying to pick which matchups and influence which matchups you think favor you.
The old switcheroo. I like
that. And you might have armies that are really good at defending, like Necrons quite often are used for this because they're quite good at just kind of sitting there and not losing. They don't necessarily win, but especially if you're using WTC style scoring where it's 20-0, and actually what you want out of some games is just to not lose that badly.
Yeah.
You'll have armies that are designed for that. They might not win every game, they might not win most games, but if they lose 11-9 or 18 or 12-8 or whatever, that's acceptable, because that means they're not getting a good score on the other side, and your attackers can rack up 20-0 on their side. And that's where the points kind of balance out, is you're looking for big wins on your side and small losses going the other way.
Okay, so when you're picking your armies, you kind of got to come up with 2 like real good attacking armies, like you said, like Tower, very like, right, let's just go kill them, table them, done. And then you got to pick other armies which kind of complement them as well. So obviously Custodes are good at both, so they're kind of the Swiss Army knife of the entire thing. So they can be very good at being durable, and they're very good at being the attackers. I guess like you could then have like Drukhari or maybe Harlequins as the attackers, and then have stuff like Necrons and Dark Angels, because Dark Angels can just sit there and just not do anything.
Yeah, Dark Angel is very good sort of defender army because you have a really solid game plan that you kind of just do.
Yeah.
Like their interaction with the opponent doesn't need to be that big of a deal, and you can just put that down and go, okay, well, if someone really goes for it, they might beat this. But you might sit there and score 85 points just from existing on the table. And in a 20-0 system, that's fine because you don't lose that badly. You might pull out a draw from that. So that's kind of logic. It depends on the format of the tournament. If it's not 20-0, it kind of changes the logic a little bit.
Yeah.
At the ITT that was run by the Warhammer Tournaments guys last weekend, it was a little bit weird. It was basically you won or lost games like normal. If you won your game, you got 10 extra battle points essentially. So you could get like 110 max. If you maxed your score, you got 110 points. But the team win was based on battle points.
Yeah.
So if your team scored, say, 500 and the other team scored 400, then your team wins. Even if you somehow lost, we had this happen in one of our rounds. We won 3 games, but our 2 losses were guys who got absolutely crushed, and the wins weren't that big, so they pulled out the win by like a point because they had better overall battle points, even though they hadn't won all the games. So I mean, which you can kind of do at 20 as well, although I don't think you can necessarily easily kind of pull that off. Because the other thing at the ITT was there was a small kind of break point for a draw. So if your teams were within 10 points of each other on your overall scores, you drew. So they won by essentially by 11, which put them into a win rather than a draw. So it depends on kind of how the scoring is set up, kind of how you approach that. It's very different if you're like, we just need to get 11 more points versus 20-0, where potentially it's like we can really kind of drag out kind of 2 games here and just get like an 11-9, and that will really help. The logic is different.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Well, so what did you take when you went to the Goonhammer? Did you take your Drukhari?
Yeah, so I was on Drukhari, and we had Custodes, we had Dark Angels, Tau, and like a Monster Mash Chaos list.
Oh, monsters! Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I kind of like that sort of stuff. Yeah, I love that. I'm a big chaos guy. I've got so many points of chaos, just sitting there waiting.
Please, any good book.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least a wound.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have just done it ages ago. Just one FAQ, or all chaos Space Marines go up by 1 wound and increase by 4 points. Done.
See, I think the wound thing is a trap. I don't think you actually want +1 wound.
Not with Noise Marines. Noise Marines, you want them as they are now, just cheap and cheerful, and well, they're not cheap. There's like 400 points for 20 of them, which is disgusting.
It's a lot. I mean, they do a lot as well. I think the thing with saying, we need 2 wounds is, I mean, would you take a 12-point Chaos Marine, or like what are they, like 18 points Attack Marines? Which would you rather have? You'd rather have the Chaos Marine, because with so much stuff that's damage 2 out there, you essentially don't have any more wounds than anyone else does.
It's true. It is true.
But you could put more Chaos Marines down by volume, or keep them cheap, which is what you really want.
Yeah, I always think though, like bolters, like why the hell are they not like really oppressive? Because that, on like all of like the demos you see of like the Warhammer like plus stuff and all of the like fan made stuff, bolt guns are like a mini tank shell which is smashing these nids or Tau or whatever in the face. Why are they not if you were to say to put them in 40k stats but versus the law, what would a bolt gun stat be if it was like accurate to the law?
See, I think this is interesting because I don't think they're that inaccurate to the law. I think it's just that there is so much difference in expectation between like what's in the background versus what happens on the table. So I think there's two parts there. One is basically that you see a lot more chaos. You see a lot more, kind of big tyrannid creatures. You see a lot more kind of super heavies, a lot more laws of war, that kind of thing. Whereas in the fluff, most of the time when Marines are fighting stuff, it's termagants, it's renegade guard, it's it's these little things. So there's a kind of relative weighting of like they tear stuff up in the lore because it's like they're shooting guardsmen 90% of the time. But there is the big point, which is the transition from kind of like 3rd to 7th ed to 8th ed. Is that bolt guns are one of the few things where actually their AP got appreciably worse. One of the big problems in 9th is that AP on everything is just so high. Like everything has -1, -2. There's been a kind of general creep upwards of like, well, a gun needs to be good, so it needs AP. So then everything is weaker against APs. We need more invulnerable saves.
Yeah.
Then we need to ignore invulnerable saves, this kind of stuff. Where bolt guns kind of went, well, we were AP5 in the old system, so those exact targets, termagants, guardsmen, guardians, that kind of thing, they absolutely ripped through because you didn't used to get a save against that. And then they transitioned to 8th ed and they're AP0 because that's what AP5 turned into, was AP0. AP1 was kind of heavy bolters downwards. It was the old AP4.
Yeah.
And so bolt guns now, they feel really ineffective. Like a lot of stuff that used to get no save at all against them now gets, it gets a 5 up, a 4 up, whatever. So they relatively do worse. But the problem is, you go, oh, okay, well, bolt guns need to have AP because that's what they should have. They should be ripping through the stuff that's like, flak armor or whatever. Then you've just got one more thing that's got more AP, and you continue that kind of damage race of everything does more damage and more AP and this and that and the other. And I fully expect we'll get it. We'll get a Space Marine 9.5 book, and it'll have bolt guns with AP1, and everyone will just be like, oh, okay, cool. It was nice to have an armor save briefly.
Well, speaking about lore, because you've just made me think about the D canon, because in the lore, it is literally flowing like a black hole at someone.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious now, because I haven't actually looked at it, like what the AP is. Yeah, so for a lore perspective, the D cycle, the Wraith canon, basically the same thing for lore. Strength 10, so good strength. Like that's what a black hole is. For AP 4, it's okay. This up there with all the dark lances and all that sort of stuff. D3 plus 3 damage, and then you take a mortal. I think that's okay. I think if you're looking in perspective as like back in 7th when we used to have the D table where you could roll a dice and another 6 and just die.
Nice.
Yeah, so I do think like that is actually quite accurate considering a bolter is strength 4 AP 0 1 damage. Just makes sense. Yeah. I was just curious about
that. My favorite lore thing right now is Yannari, because if you go back to Phoenix Rising, the fluff for that is Yvrane's got this Yannari army together, and it's Jainzar, it's Lilith, it's a Solitaire, and wasn't relevant at the time, but obviously is now. It's a Corsair fleet. And what can you not put in a Yannari army? Jainzar, Lilith, a Solitaire, or Corsairs. I just love it. Every time I remember it, I'm just like, this is amazing. Like, did that guy upset somebody? Like, is this the guy in the background team that they all think is a dick, and they were just like, you know what, that exact piece of fluff, we're going to make sure you can't do any of that, so you look like a twat.
Because that actually came up a conversation at my local gaming club the other day, and we were just like, you can't do it. But no, it's in the lore. It's going to be in the book. You can't do it.
And so much GW rules design is driven by background. They write all these rules that are trying to represent these random things from the lore. But then there's this one very specific section of fluff that they just went, no, absolutely none of that. We've even added Corsairs to the game, but no. It's odd.
Do you think it also is odd that Drazar? I know I have zero complaints about Drazar. Just put that in the world now. Do you think it's odd that Drazar doesn't have the only taking 3 wounds a phase or something like the other Phoenix Lords?
I don't think so. I mean, he has the -1 damage, and I think that was it's a similar idea. But I don't know if it's an intentional thing or if it's just like, rules development moved on.
Maybe.
I think you can kind of fairly say like he's not a Phoenix Lord. He probably was, but if you look at a background, he's not a Phoenix Lord anymore. He specifically has kind of rejected that and moved on from it. So I think that's probably fair enough to say like they're similar.
Yeah.
But there's some differences in the way that kind of works in game, which I think is a nice way to say probably they just didn't think of it at the time. And next time around he'll get it, but we'll see.
Maybe it should be used the phrase as like Drazar can be Onaga Gauntleted, Jainzar can't. That's the 2 things.
That's what you get for falling to the dark side, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about Goonhammer Open. So
yes.
This is a tournament series that the lovely everyone at Goonhammer is running, and you're organising the Goonhammer Opens, and it was very successful in the US. And you had, was it one last year?
So we had one in the US last year in, I want to say September. I think the dates at Nova would have been didn't end up running. We had like 50 people for a GT there and sort of 24 for a narrative. We ran one in this country in sort of late October and got about 100 up in Nottingham for that as well. So
that's really good.
Yeah, good. A good first year last year.
Yeah. So it's very impressive. And this year you are having 2, aren't you? And you're also having some special guests who are going to be live streaming the event for you.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got one at the end of May and then one at the end of October. And yeah, Hellstorm Wargaming streamed them last time, and they'll be streaming again for these two. Yeah, really looking forward to them. The one in May is again about 100 at the moment, and then the tickets for October will be just about on sale as this goes out.
Yep.
And yeah, we can take about 128. So we'd love to see you all.
Yeah. So everyone, please buy those tickets, and then you could also get on stream with the lovely guys from Hellstorm Wargaming and show off your lovely armies. And yeah, I'm gonna want to go because why wouldn't I? Like
you can win the big gold belt. So
yeah, that's why wouldn't I want to run that? Hopefully there'll be some broken chaos that I have in like my cupboard that will be out by the October, and I can just go, great, cool, done. Belt, please, thank you. Yeah, so everyone, please go check out the links will be below in the description. And yeah, please go check out Goonhammer and the tournaments they got coming up. And we're just going to wind this down now because I like to keep these like shortish, and I just want to talk a bit hobby about you because we talked a lot about kind of like meta and just our general chat about all of that has been an interesting conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, tournaments, all this sort of stuff. So hobby wise, what armies are you working on at the moment?
What armies am I not working on at the moment? So I'm terrible anyway for kind of just like magpieing and going like, oh, this looks interesting, oh, I'll have a bit of this. And then also with the kind of Games Workshop review copy system as well, yeah, you just kind of get random stuff all the time. So we just got loads of the new Eldar. You know, those are fantastic, really good models. I have, I guess, some Harlequins on the desk at the moment, some Custodes, because I had a Custodes army that I bought in kind of August last year, and then didn't get around to painting, and kind of wish I had.
Yeah.
That would be great to have right about now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just got those. So yeah, Custodes, Harley, Eldar. I've got a Tech Priest down there. I'm just looking at what's on the desk now. A little Adeptus Titanicus Imperial Knight. Love Titanicus as well. Great game. There's also a Titanicus narrative happening at the Goonhammer Open in May and hopefully also in October. So if that's more your thing, then check that out. Yeah, what else? A Necromunda Ambot that someone gave me. Love, great model. Love that model.
I think it was when we came out of lockdown and I was getting a bit fed up of just playing competitive games. On a club, we ran a Necromunda campaign and I loved it. So I chose Goliath. And I painted them as they're kind of like the Joker's henchmen, the way I did it. So they all had like really badly painted, like deliberately to look badly, like like Joker face paint all over them, all wearing like pink armor, and then green mohawks. I absolutely loved it. And then they were called GBN from I like How I Met Your Mother, and Goliath National Bank, and I just thought that's fine, that works perfectly for fluff. Goliath National Bank, and we control all the Underhive currency flow. So I thought that was hilarious. But you know, I love that. I love the Necromunda stuff. I haven't played it in ages. It's been like almost like a year since I played some.
Necromunda is one of those things where like it's a terrible game, like from a rules design point of view. It's barely hangs together, but it's not that kind of game. You don't have to worry about it too much. It's much more about kind of the stories you create and kind of just like mad things happening.
Yeah.
You know, it really lends itself to that kind of narrative, and yeah, just I mean, we have a regular series on it as well, Necromonday, and some really sort of committed guys. The one that came out today was I think Noodle Monday or something. Our man Fowler's had an interesting weekend. But yeah, it's fantastic kind of property and a really kind of interesting kind of different take on 40k as a setting, I think.
Yeah. So there you go. You can check out another article from Goonhammer. They cover everything.
We do, and I feel like I'd be upsetting our AOS team. I didn't mention them. They do great work on AOS. But yeah, we really do. We kind of cover pretty much everything GW, and then kind of other stuff as well. It really is kind of like we talk about the stuff that we love, you know, if someone has a real passion for, you know, a particular game, a particular kind of approach to the hobby, like whatever else, like they have a platform to talk about it. And I think that's one of my favorite things about the site. You know, we're quite well known for the competitive 40k stuff,
Yes.
and we certainly see that reflected in kind of what gets the most attention. But we have all these kind of little sub audiences of people who just love, like, you know, they love Adeptus Titanicus, or they love Necromunda, or like the historicals coverage we do of all these kind of dad games. You know, it's yeah, it's great.
Yeah, do you do like the bolt action stuff? Because at my local club, there's and there'll be people watching it from it, who do all what do they play their bolt action. I can't remember the other old World War II game.
Flames of War.
Yeah, that's the one.
So we talk about bolt action a bit. I don't think we talk about Flames of War a ton. Our historical players mostly don't like it. I don't think, basically.
Yeah.
It's not their favourite version of historical gaming rules. But I think we talk about bolt action a bit. It kind of depends on you know, again, it's their passions, the games they're interested in, and kind of similar to a lot of 40k players who are like, oh, I just collect every faction because I love them. You know, we've got guys who are like, oh, every period, every army, just like all these different things that they're all over. I'm trying to think what kind of stuff we do cover with that. I think a lot of what's popular is like the Too Fat Lardies games, which is a British company,
Yes.
and they do a very interesting. They do a number of really interesting systems, but they have a kind of obsession with this idea of what's called friction, which is basically you have your plan for your army, you take it to the battlefield, and then friction happens and nothing goes how you planned it to. And their games are kind of all about stuff kind of being out of control. You know, not in a kind of zany, like, you know, Warhammer Orcs way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have resources. You don't necessarily have the resources you wanted to have.
Yeah.
And your game is about kind of using them the best way you can with those limitations on you. And they're very popular with our particular historical group.
That's a very interesting way to think about it, because it kind of appeals to me, because I have been trying to think about other like games to play other than like 40k, and Infinity kind of piqued my interest, but then I bought a model and it was so small. I was like, I'm not gonna paint any of this. Like, it's just so small.
Yeah.
And I actually, what I ended up doing is giving it to my friend Tord, who painted up as a Necromunda bounty hunter sniper for me,
Okay.
which is really cool. But do you do Infinity on your website as well?
Yeah, so we do talk about Infinity. We've got a couple of really passionate Infinity players.
Yeah.
I've played Infinity myself a little bit. It's one of those games where I think it's a really great game, but there's no way I'll ever play it because I just wouldn't do justice to it. It feels like a game where you really want to kind of get, like, you know, full bore into it. You want to learn every faction and every rule, and you know, really kind of dive in there. And like, I just don't have the time or the brain space for multiple games where I think about them like that.
Well, you think about how much time we all put into the hobby, and like looking at all the rules, researching like all the rules, how to play, all this sort of stuff, what's hot, what's not. Especially if you're a tournament player like yourself, like you want to know what's good all the time. And then you got to think about your hobby part of it, which is actually getting the models to the painting standards so you can
Oh
actually.
yes.
Yeah, it's just like I managed to paint like 20, including characters, we call them by the models, but like 30 Harlequin sized models over from the last weekend. And
that's good.
I smashed them out. I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
absolutely smashed them out. But it's only because like I like planned everything, and I was like, right, I'm gonna do it all. I did a lot of contrast paint. Sad to say, but I don't know how I would got those
That's a good
colours.
technique.
I don't know how I would have got all of the Harlequins colors without contrast paint, because you just put loads of checkers on them and then you just go contrast paint and it just looks great. And especially the I don't even know what they're called. They're not scarves, are they?
Oh, the little like tassels and things they have hanging off it. Yeah.
So each squad is like individually like colored,
Mm-hmm.
and they all like crazy colors everywhere, all these different designs on all of them. But then each one of them, each squad just has the exact same like tassel thing that is like red, and all the red ones are in one squad. So it's quite easy to tell them behind, because I don't want to do I don't want to do the clip-on bases that you put for the
I never like those.
no, and because the case I've got is like the 720 from, I think it's Battle Foam, I think it is, and it's basically like a tray which you pull out, and then all your models are like magged on top of it. The magnets would be quite annoying to, because you can't drill into the clippy on bases things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah, yeah, doing a lot. Oh, we've run out of time. I've literally, I mean, me and you could talk about hobby 40k for hours.
Yeah, keep
But
on going.
yeah, exactly. So I know we've touched on like Goonhammer Open and what your website does. Now this is your like time to just splurge all the information and get all those people who probably already are on your website, but for the sake of me, sell yourself to the public and go ahead.
Sell myself to the public. I'm going to lower myself to salesmanship. No, yeah. So I mean, Goonhammer, we like I said, we do that kind of competitive 40k content, and that's probably the thing that if you're listening to this, it's best for. But we cover all kinds of stuff as well. As we said, we talk about Age of Sigmar, we talk about Necromunda, we talk about Adeptus Titanicus, really passionate team around Adeptus Titanicus. We just kind of cover anything kind of like wargamey, and if there's stuff that you think we should cover and we don't, please let us know. We'd love to find out anything else you'd like us to talk about. I should also just mention as well Administratum. So if you're more of a narrative kind of 40k player and you're more interested in in representing the lore and playing campaigns and that kind of thing, we have you covered on that as well, because we've taken over Administratum, which is I mean, I would say it's the best tool because we're the ones who own it.
Yeah.
Other people told us the old version was really good too, and that's why we were interested in the first place. But yeah, if you're looking to run that kind of narrative campaign, that's a fantastic resource for that. And we've got a couple of guys writing the code for that and building that out, and
Oh, wow.
unbelievably passionate about the project. So yeah, that's really exciting as well. We're looking to take that on and develop that. So yeah, if you're more interested in the narrative side than the competitive side, Administratum absolutely a fantastic tool.
Yeah, awesome. And don't forget to buy all those tickets for the
Yes,
Goonhammer Opens.
buy tickets.
Yeah, buy the tickets and then
End of May, end of October.
yep, end of May, end of October, and the tickets are all on sale now. And just help Goonhammer out, help all these local tournaments out that you go to. Just go to them, It's not a hostile environment at all. It's such a friendly environment. I went to one last weekend. You've been to like 2 this year already, and like we just have the best time. We just really do. It's just you see common faces over the year, and you just go for beers, and it's just such a friendly environment. And it's a hobby that we're all so dedicated to, and there's no other way, no other better way of like showing appreciation than meeting up with all your friends who also have this passion as well. And another thing, make Goonhammer your daily lunchtime break. Like go on Goonhammer, scroll through all the different topics. I do it all the time, and it's super interesting to see what the different points of views come out. And you never know, you might see your name in one of the top descriptions for the meta.
Yeah,
Meta segment.
go and win something, place top 4 somewhere, and you'll be in that competitive innovations.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so thank you for everyone for watching this episode, and this has been Liam from Goonhammer, another tabletop legend for you. And yeah, please like, subscribe, and all the links will be in the description to this video for everything that Liam's been talking about, and all the websites and all the tournaments for that he's going to be putting on. Please subscribe. I get maybe 10% of people subscribed who watch these videos. Please watch them. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out hugely. And yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.